So, have you ever tried to check your US credit report online with your ITIN, only to get hit with some frustrating error message? Yeah, you are not alone. It feels like running into a digital brick wall, but there's a very specific reason for it. And more importantly, there's a clear path around it. Let's break down exactly why this happens and how you can actually solve it. This is the big question, isn't it? It's a huge hurdle for millions of people trying to navigate the US financial system. You've got an official number, you're paying your taxes, but trying to access your own credit information through the normal online portals feels pretty much impossible. Today, we're going to get to the bottom of why this happens and what you can do about it. All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll look at why the system is designed the way it is. Then, we'll dig into what I call the ITIN Paradox. That's where all the confusion comes from. After that, I'll walk you step by step through the manual process that actually works. We'll also cover how to build a credit file from scratch. And finally, we'll zoom out and look at some new solutions that are popping up. Okay, first things first. We have to understand the basic blueprint of the system we're dealing with. The entire US credit reporting world was built with one and only one primary identifier in mind, the Social Security number, the SSN. Think of the SSN as the universal username for your financial life in the US. Credit bureaus, Experian, TransUnion, Equifax, they use it as their main tool to track everything. Your earnings, your payments, your whole credit history. So their automated online systems like annualcreditreport.com are basically hardwired to look for that specific 9-digit number to pull up your file instantly. So, if the whole system is built for SSNs, where in the world does that leave ITIN holders? This brings us to the core of the problem, the central puzzle. You have an official government-issued number, so why doesn't it just work? This is what we're calling the ITIN Paradox. Let's get really clear on what an ITIN actually is. It's a 9-digit tax processing number. It always starts with a 9, and it's issued by the IRS for one specific job: federal tax reporting. That's it. If you're required to file a US tax return, but you can't get an SSN, the IRS gives you an ITIN so you can follow the law. And the difference between the two really comes down to purpose and permanence. An SSN is meant to be a lifelong identifier for work and benefits, and it comes from the Social Security Administration. An ITIN, on the other hand, is purely for tax stuff from the IRS. And, get this, it can actually expire if you don't use it. That distinction is absolutely crucial. And here it is. This is the heart of the paradox. This quote from the US Treasury Department basically explains everything. Even though the IRS issues the ITIN, the Treasury itself explicitly warns banks not to use it for identity verification. And why? Well, because the paperwork you need for an ITIN is for tax purposes, not the super strict identity proofing that banks need to do. So, that official warning right there is the direct reason you get blocked online. Those automated systems are programmed to use an SSN for secure identity checks. When you type in an ITIN, the system flags it as the wrong kind of number for that particular job and just shuts the door. It's a system rule, not anything personal against you. Okay, so now that we know why it doesn't work, we can focus on how to make it work. If the automated online door is locked, you just have to use the manual offline key. This is the official and totally effective way to get your hands on your report. Right, the process is a bit old school, but it works. You have to contact each credit bureau, Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, directly by mail. In your letter, you'll put in all your key info, but here's the most critical step, so listen up. You have to explicitly state that the number you're providing is an ITIN. This is so important because it stops them from thinking it's just a typo of an SSN, which would just cause another error. You'll also need to include copies of some documents to prove your identity and address. Something like a passport and a utility bill. Okay, So let's say you're all ready to mail in your request. Hold on, there's one more really vital piece to this puzzle. You can only get a credit report if a credit file actually exists for you. If you're brand new to the US financial system, you might have to build one from the ground up first. So how do you do that? Well, the goal is to get financial institutions to start reporting your good payment history to the credit bureaus under your name and ITIN. A great first step is opening a bank account. Then you can apply for a credit card. A lot of ITIN holders have great luck with a secured card. That's where you put down a small deposit. As your history grows, you might even get approved for bigger loans for a car or even a home. A good tip here is to work with local credit unions. They're often way more flexible with ITIN lending. So yeah, the system is complex, but it's not set in stone. As more and more people use ITINs, new tools and services are actually starting to show up to help bridge these gaps in the system. This is a really common situation. Maybe you've managed credit perfectly for years back in your home country. But when you get to the US, it's like you're starting from absolute zero. Traditionally, that entire history was just invisible to lenders here. This is where cool, innovative services like Nova Credit come into play. You can think of them as a translator for your financial past. They partner with credit bureaus in other countries to create a US equivalent report that lenders here can understand. This can be a total game changer for getting approved for your first US credit card or loan without having to build a file from scratch. So let's just quickly recap the most important takeaways here. Number 1, the US credit system is built for SSNs, period. Number 2, that ITIN Paradox, where it's a real tax number but not a real ID for banks, that's why the online systems fail. 3, your workaround, your solution is that manual mail-in request process. And finally, number 4, you can't get a report if one doesn't exist. So if you're starting from zero, building that credit is your first and most important step. Understanding why this system works the way it does is probably the most powerful tool you have. It turns all that frustration into a clear, actionable plan. So whether it's applying for that first secured card or getting those letters ready for the mail, you now have the map. The only question left is, where are you going to begin?